This guy is a shepherd who the village doesn't really like, but what they don't know is that he's actually a mage. In this world, mages and knights are at the top. However, knights are nothing more than slaves to the mages. So, thinking he was just one of them, he hid his true power. That is, until later when the village is attacked by a giant monster, and he discovers that he's actually a noble mage, or rather a descendant of God coming from an extremely powerful bloodline. Because of this, he decides to set out to reach the peak of power and escape this boring village. But first, leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel. Anyway, let's get into the story. The story begins with a boy saying he wants to be a mage. He faces his friend as if she were a monster, and she pretends to be a magic beast that eats mages. And so, the little mage attacks the girl. She gets really angry because he actually hit her, while he confidently claims that monsters have to lose to mages. The girl then says she wants to be a mage too, but he says she can't, which she thinks is totally unfair. Watching them from afar, an old man approaches, commenting that those brats have a lot of energy in the morning. The boy immediately recognizes him as Grandpa Rabbus and asks what he needs to do to become a mage. The old man tells him he can't become one just because he wants to. Mages are the pinnacle of humanity, those who rule over high-ranking humans. They are nobles and knights who want the ability to use the powers of their mysterious ancestors. So unfortunately, they can't just become mages. A man right behind the old man asks how he can say that to the children, but then changes the subject to ask if the rumors are true. The old man asks what he's talking about. The villager says he heard that a monster has appeared. The old man immediately turns serious and says that, in the end, it's true. They say Rob ran into something at the entrance last night. Its entire body was covered in a black shadow, and it was a leopard the size of a house. But the old man tells them not to worry, because the village chief has already gone to the city to ask a mage for help. He will definitely bring one back, and the monster will be defeated. The little girl's mother says that's a relief. She asks her daughter if she heard that, and warns her that for now, they can't go into the forest because it's too dangerous. The old man also comments that they must be careful, because without a mage, killing monsters is practically impossible. The boy's father asks if all the villagers know about this, and the old man says they do. But then he asks about that guy. Old man Rabbus asks who he's talking about, and the villager mentions the shepherd of Mount Rizerel Turan. We then see the shepherd Turan lying on his sheep, resting outdoors. He thinks to himself about how boring everything is. The same landscape, the same day over and over again. At this rate, he feels like he'll even forget how to speak. However, someone suddenly appears beside him, calling him a pathetic brat. The person says the sun hasn't even started to set, and he's already being lazy. It was old man Rabbus. Turan glares at him and says he's blocking his sunlight, telling him to leave. The old man calls him rude and asks if he still holds a grudge over that incident. Turan asks what he means by that incident, and if he's talking about when his mother died and the old man tried to sell her sheep. This leaves the old man feeling quite embarrassed. Then, Turan sits up and says that yes, that's exactly it. He still feels resentment toward the old man, and he's not generous enough to share his mother's inheritance. They aren't close enough to exchange greetings, so he can say what he wants and get out of there. The old man gets very angry at his rudeness, calling him a little brat, but Turan angrily asks what he means by that. A bit startled, the old man just says that a monster has appeared. Turan asks what he means by a monster, and the old man explains it's said to be a leopard the size of a house. Rob ended up finding it, and the old man is heading back now after warning the villagers. Turan tells him that's a serious problem, but the old man says he isn't afraid, even though he's the most likely target out there. He really doesn't know where he gets his courage from, but anyway, the village chief went to the city to get help from a mage, so he should be careful. The old man says he came there because he was worried about him, but our protagonist says he isn't being honest, asking why he doesn't just admit he only came to check on the sheep and not him. Then, angrily, he tells the old man to get away from him as fast as possible. He says his breath stinks so much that his nose is about to fall off. Fuming with hatred for Turan, the old man leaves, grumbling to himself. Meanwhile, Turan the shepherd starts thinking about monsters, beasts that possess mysterious powers and magic. If humans have mages, then beasts have monsters. If a mage is coming to their village because of a monster, then he'll truly be able to see a mage in person. But if it's just a rural village chief calling, there's a good chance the mage won't be anything special. Still, he's excited because he might get to see one. He wonders how strong the mage will be. But as he was heading home, he caught a very strange scent. The smell of blood. So he calmly starts walking toward the forest. Walking through there, he's certain it's coming from that direction. The smell is getting stronger and stronger. When he finally stops, he realizes it was Rabbus who had been cut in half. He remarks that the old man told him to be careful, but he was the first one to die. So, it turns out the source of the blood scent was Rabbus. However, that wound couldn't have been caused by any normal animal. It was definitely that monster. But while he was thinking about it, a massive creature was approaching him. When Turan looks up, he sees it is indeed the monster. It has the body of a leopard, but it's the size of a house. Meanwhile, a little boy at home asks his father how strong a monster really is, and if it's true that even adults can't defeat one. His father explains that they are insanely strong. If normal adults tried to fight one empty-handed, not even their bones would be left. The curious son asks if even his father couldn't beat it. Terrified, he asks what will happen to the village, but his father tells him not to worry. He says the village chief will quickly bring a mage to defeat the monster, so they won't have any problems. The boy asks if the mage might lose, and if he'll really be able to punish the monster. His father says of course he will, explaining that mages are powerful beings born with magic in their bodies. They can kill monsters with a single word. But back to our protagonist, the leopard monster lunges at him, while Turan calmly stares it down, and then he says, "Die." This causes the monster to dodge him instantly. Our protagonist realizes that nothing actually happened. The monster lunges again, trying to bite him. So he shouts once more, but this time he says, "Stop." The monster flinches again, afraid he might be using magic. Turan, the shepherd, says he knew killing a monster wouldn't be that easy, but it seems he couldn't even stop it, as the leopard monster charges once more. But our boy easily dodges the attack, saying that in this case, he'll pick up a stone. He says a shepherd should always do what a shepherd does, holding a small stone and facing the giant beast. He says, "Harden." Then he places the stone in his sling, and with glowing eyes he says, "Speed." He prepares to throw the stone as the monster rushes toward him. Finally he says, "Pierce." Launching the stone at an incredible speed, it flies straight toward the monster's head, but unfortunately it only grazes its neck, failing to finish it off. Taking advantage of this, the monster lunges to bite him again. But our protagonist just smiles. He says he wasn't actually aiming for its neck, but its head. As the stone returns, it hits the Delpar right in the eye, exploding its head, and staring at the scene, our protagonist notes it's his first time using that on a monster. He wonders if he should just throw the body into a hole or something. In the end, this is really troublesome. Those jerks from the village made him work way too hard. As he says this, he reflects on the fact that he is a mage. He realized he had special abilities 8 years ago. When he was only 10, he levitated several objects in his house. Excited, he asked his mother if she thought it was as cool as he did, but his mother was completely paralyzed as she watched. He excitedly told her he could create fire and wind at the same time. Turan remembers this clearly, as it was the first and last time his mother ever got angry with him, telling him to stop. Speaking to her son, Tora, she told him to put those things down and calmly asked if he wanted to keep living with her for a long time. Tora said that of course he did, so she made him promise one thing, that he would never use that power again. He could never use it in front of others, making it a secret promise between them. Confused, Tora asked why, and his mother asked if he remembered the story of the noble and the warrior. The boy says he does. She explains that people call those with special powers mages. They can be nobles or knights, but there's a big difference. Nobles are descendants of divine beings called Freyas, who came from heaven to save ancient humans. Knights, however, are descendants of nobles who mix their bloodline with humans. She asks if he remembers that. That's why there's a distinction between them among mages. Then she explains why he can't use his power. It's because he inherited his powers from his father, who was a knight. There are many evil nobles in the world who treat knights like slaves. He must remember that no one can ever know he's a mage. He had to promise her that. 8 years have passed since then, and he continues to keep that promise, even though she's gone now. A promise is a promise, and he won't break it. He has no desire to reveal he's a mage, or even to leave this mountain. But a while later, while he's resting at home, someone starts banging loudly on his door, telling him to get out here. When our protagonist opens the door, he is surrounded by several men. Exhausted by it all, he asks what they're doing there, and if they're really claiming he killed Rebus. What is this nonsense? But the man in front grabs him and calls him shameless. He claims he hurt old Rebus and left him to be eaten by monsters. But our protagonist says he knows why they're trying to frame him. The man asks what he's talking about. Our protagonist says the old man died alone because the young men were too afraid of the monsters. He realizes they think framing him is the easiest way to shift the blame from themselves onto him. The man prepares to strike him, but our protagonist quickly dodges the blow. He thinks to himself that magic is very convenient as he headbutts the man. He knows that if he just says a word, it only costs a bit of mana. So, he whispers, "Fall." The man in front of him suddenly collapses. Turan thinks that this way, he doesn't have to make a mess. He can use just a bit of magic to trick them, without it being too obvious. He uses just enough magic so they don't die, allowing him to overpower them. He can defeat them easily. And he's lived this way for 8 long years. He hides the fact that he's a mage, and tells them they should have used their strength for Rabus's funeral instead. Then, he turns to the women and asks if they came to fight as well. The one in front says no, that's not it, and that they just came to see him, so he tells her to just take them away. Heading back home, he thinks about how the village will be in chaos again, and how they'll try to rob him while he's making his medicine. But he doesn't really mind. When the time comes, he can just beat them until he gets a fair deal. He's already thrashed them once, so they probably won't be back for a while. But just as he's thinking that, there's a sudden knock at the door. Turan thinks they must have lost their minds, and so he storms to the door and flings it open, asking angrily who it is and if they really have a death wish. To Turan's surprise, it's a complete stranger. The boy asks who he is, and the man politely asks for a favor, though he admits he might have arrived at a bad time. Looking him over, the boy realizes he might be a traveler. He apologizes and says it's fine, explaining that some very unpleasant people were just there. He remembers his mother taught him good manners, but he wonders if he's doing the right thing. He's never treated anyone from this pathetic village well, so this still feels strange to him. This traveler is a bit odd though, as he's carrying a sword in such a remote village. He asks the man if he's looking for a tavern, and it turns out he was right. So, he invites the man inside. He prepares some food for him and mentions that things aren't great, so there isn't much to eat. However, the traveler calls it a complete feast. He's genuinely impressed and asks if the boy has ever met anyone from outside the village. Our boy says he hasn't. He was born and raised on this mountain, living his life as a shepherd. It's very rare for tourists to visit this village. The traveler starts staring at Turan, who is drinking very politely. The man remarks that he's quite interesting. For someone raised as a shepherd, he has excellent manners. His parents must have raised him well. And the boy says he learned everything from his mother. Looking around, the traveler notices no sign of her, and the boy explains she passed away years ago from an illness. The man says she did a great job raising a son like him, and he's sure she's with the gods in a celestial palace now. As he clears the dishes, the traveler thanks him again. The boy says he just lives the way his mother taught him, so it's no trouble, but he's curious about what brought the man to the village. The traveler explains he was asked for a favor. Turan asks what kind of favor, remembering that the villagers were looking for someone to deal with the leopard monster. To Turan's shock, the traveler reveals he's a mage, leaving the boy paralyzed. After a moment, he realizes this must be the mage the village elder mentioned, and the traveler confirms it. The man then asks if he can ask a question. The boy says of course. The mage explains that he senses a monster in the area, but he can't actually see one. What's even more strange is that the boy knows about the elder and the monster, yet he remains perfectly calm and composed. If a monster wanted a human, it would go after him first, but as he can see, the boy isn't afraid at all. He seems very brave for a shepherd who has never left town. He then seriously asks Turan who he really is. Hearing this, the boy remembers asking his mother why no one could know he was a mage. His mother told him it was because of the wicked nobles. Curious, Turan asked what she meant, and she explained that if nobles are like shepherds, then knights are like the sheep. They might treat them with love like family, but they will sell or sacrifice them if necessary. She didn't want that kind of life for him. She just wanted him to keep living with her as they always had. She asked if he wanted that too, and he said of course. So, she warned him again that no one must ever know he's a mage, especially other mages. If they find out, they'll separate them and turn him into a disposable sheep. Back in the present, the boy stares at the man seriously, thinking that to avoid being discovered, he might even have to kill people. He begins to wonder how things ended up like this. But staring at Turan, the mage asks why he isn't answering. Then, looking a bit awkward, the man says that if he makes a face like that, his joke becomes very dull. Surprised, Turan asks if it was just a joke. But even so, he apologizes, saying he doesn't have much of a sense of humor. The mage stands up and says it's fine, apologizing himself for scaring the boy. On the other hand, our protagonist says it's his first time hearing a joke about mages, so he was caught off guard. The mage says his reaction was great, but admits he took the joke too far. Realizing they haven't introduced themselves, the man says it's a pleasure to meet him. He is Kior, a nomad. The boy apologizes as well, saying he should have introduced himself sooner. He is Turan, a shepherd, and after things calm down, they go back to eating. Our protagonist mentions that he's turning 18 this year. Kior, on the other hand, is 65. Surprised, Turan says he doesn't look that old at all. The mage explains that they age slower than normal people and live longer. Turan asks how he became a nomad, and Kior says that after serving the Iberian family for 60 years, he left. He wanted to wander from place to place without stopping. The boy thinks that sounds romantic. As they talk, Turan realizes he's having a very innocent conversation with someone he feels is a good person. He never realized that something like this could be so much fun. When night falls, Kior says it's getting late and he should head out. The boy agrees, realizing he hadn't even noticed the sun was rising again, but before leaving, Kior hands him a silver coin. It's pure silver, so it should cover the cost of the meal. The boy accepts it and wishes him luck on his hunt. Kior says they shouldn't act like they'll never see each other again. He asks if he can come by to visit more often whenever he's in the area. After Kior leaves, the boy returns to his daily life, being an ordinary shepherd. But he's a shepherd who also knows how to use magic. He calls out, "Gather," and the sheep seem to listen, huddling around him. Unlike other days, the boy is quite excited today. He thinks about how it's his first time meeting another mage, and how long it's been since he had a good conversation. He liked the natural lightness and humor in the man's speech, more so than any other adult he'd ever met in his life. That man really was a good person, and he kept coming back with new gifts from his hunts. He had always thought knights were just emotionless hunting dogs used by arrogant nobles. Anyway, Turan wonders how he can tell him that there are no more monsters on Mount Rosario. Meanwhile, Kior walks through the forest with a very strange feeling. He notices signs of a battle, but he can't sense a monster's presence. He wonders if it's already been hunted. But who hunted it? Could the village chief have called another mage besides him? He tells himself it's a relief either way. If someone killed the monster and things are okay, that's all that matters. But at that moment, to Kior's surprise, he finally senses the monster's presence. And without him even turning around, that same monster, now completely deformed, is right in front of him. Then, Kaora recognizes it as a monster specter, but he wonders in confusion who would do such a thing. Suddenly, the monster attacks. After dodging, he thinks to himself that if you don't absorb or disperse the mana from a monster's corpse, it becomes a specter. Any mage who hunts monsters should know that. So whoever killed this monster was definitely a mage. He's 100% certain of it. But he wonders why they let it become a specter, and maybe they didn't know this could happen, but he doubts it. A rookie knight who doesn't even know the basics couldn't kill a monster of this caliber. It must have been someone else with bad intentions. Regardless, he has to destroy it, or it will kill the villagers. He creates a magic arrow and fires it at the monster. But he realizes, unfortunately, that his magic was nullified. This monster's mana is much stronger than his own. Then he notices something even more shocking. The monster has disappeared. He realizes it's trying to counter magic with magic, but he can't tell where it is. But right beneath Kaor, in his very own shadow, the monster silently and cunningly prepares to attack him. With quick reflexes, Kaor manages to dodge at the last second, but he's still wounded. He realizes this monster is beyond the level of a mere knight. At the very least, a low-rank artifact would be needed. To think he'd find a specter of this level in some random village, you really never know what life will throw at you. And face to face with the monster, he thinks this is his end. And he's not just going to die, he angrily thinks he won't go down alone. If he has to perish, he's taking the monster with him. With that, he begins charging a powerful spell, planning to concentrate all his mana into his hand and pierce the monster right as it attacks. The monster then lunges at him. Kaor is prepared to give his life to take the monster down with him. But in those split seconds, something bright flies out of the forest. It hits the monster dead center, completely catching Kaor by surprise. The monster has been knocked down again. Suddenly, someone appears and asks if he's okay, and Kaor turns around saying that a shepherd's joke is pretty good too. He quickly recognizes Tura. Surprised, he says he didn't know he was a mage, and our boy confirms it. Kaor asks why he didn't tell him, but seeing Tura's silence, he says never mind and changes the question. He wants to know why he helped him. He could have just left on his own. Thinking about this, our boy starts remembering the time they spent together as friends. He remembers asking Kaor why he was going so far. The mage asked what he meant. Our boy said he didn't know what the village chief had promised him, but with his skills, he could earn money much more easily. But Kaor just laughs at him, explaining that he feels sorry for people. Our boy asks if he's serious. Kaor mentions those living on the border, trembling in fear without any protection. But the boy says that's not his fault. Kaor explains that mages are by nature those who have inherited the power of a god. Therefore, they should take pride in protecting helpless commoners. But in the end, not every mage thinks like him. They all have their own thoughts and their own way of living. Remembering this back in the present, our boy tells him that everyone has their own way of living. But at that moment, to their surprise, the monster isn't dead. They quickly dodge an attack, and Kaor warns him to be careful as they can't handle this monster. It's impossible to fight it unless you're a noble. He tells Tura to report to the village chief and help with the evacuation while he holds it off. He spoke with conviction, but deep down he doesn't know how long he can last. Then to Kaor's surprise, our boy says it's fine. He claims if that attack landed, they'd be okay. Kaor curiously asks what he's talking about. He wonders if that attack really wasn't his full strength. He questions if a young knight hiding in the mountains can truly hunt a specter that even nobles struggle with. That was the thought the veteran Kaor had. But what he's seeing now isn't just a simple connection he made in a rural village. Nor is it just the courage of a young knight who fled from the nobles. Instead, it's a monstrous scene unfolding before his eyes. This could be the beginning of a mage who would turn the world upside down. Standing before Kaor, our boy confidently says he's always been curious about his limits. Stones begin to orbit the shepherd, Tura. Our boy tells Kaor that he's going to test his limits right now. The worried mage says he won't let him do that. No matter how amazing his talent is, this opponent is too strong. He insists they must join forces. But the moment the monster tries to attack, our boy strikes back with a stone. Kaor realizes that if he joined in now, he would only get in the way. He couldn't even react to that last attack. Against a monster like this, he's truly useless. What he needs to do now is ensure Tura's talent flourishes, as our protagonist attacks the leopard monster once more. But he mutters that it's no use, it's not working. He dodges another attack, and Kaor tells him he can't kill a specter with physical attacks. He asks how to kill it, and Kaor says he needs fire. Or electrical powers would work too. So, Tura activates fire magic against the monster. He says it's still not working, but Kaor tells him that's not the point. He knows that to apply a mage's power to another living being, establishing a connection is a basic requirement. He wonders if he really doesn't know the basics of magic. Then, he wonders if Tura was the one who killed this monster and let it become a specter. This would mean Tura has never absorbed mana in his life. He tells him not to just create fire, but to shoot it afterward. He thinks about how strong Tura is, even without ever absorbing mana. Our boy lands on the ground and charges fire magic in his palm. He thinks that while lighting a fire is easy for a mage, controlling it requires separate training. Yet Kaor realizes he can do it instantly. And so, with all his focus on the fight, Tura throws a sort of fireball or ring of fire at the monster. As it hits, the monster begins to burn. In its rage, it continues to charge at Tura. Car shouts that he must stay focused and keep pouring mana into the fire. So it doesn't go out, he has to burn the specter completely. Our boy increases his firepower, incinerating the leopard monster. Finally, after a while, they win, which surprises even Car. He knows that Spectre was incredibly strong and would normally require a noble's power, yet this boy defeated it alone. Tura, completely unbothered, asks if it's really over. Car tells him that if he doesn't want to encounter another Spectre, he must absorb the mana first. Our curious boy asks how to do that. He tells him to imagine he's draining the target. Tura does exactly as he was told. Then the monster's mana flows toward him, and he absorbs it calmly and perfectly. He feels the mana entering his body, spreading through his entire being. Surprised by this, Car walks over and asks if he feels lighter. He truly can't believe what he's seeing with his own eyes. He asks if it's really his first time absorbing mana, and our protagonist says it is. Car thinks about how, after awakening, mana grows slowly with age. The best way to get stronger is to kill monsters or mages and absorb their mana. But this was Tura's first time absorbing mana, yet he could already handle magic of this level. He has an absurd innate talent, which basically means that the young man is a complete monster. He tells Car that he was actually very rude to him. He asks which house he belongs to, but our boy turns to Car, who asks what's wrong. The boy tells him to clean off the blood first. After a while, back at the boy's house, Car, who had been treated, apologizes for his rudeness. He's sorry for making someone as esteemed as him do something like that. But young Torin says he's not esteemed at all. He's just a shepherd who never even knew his father, so he asks him to please stop, being quite firm about it. Car agrees, telling him not to look at him that way, but he wants to know what a powerful mage is doing as a shepherd. He says he doesn't mean to be disrespectful, but it doesn't suit him, and our boy explains it was his mother's request, and she told him to do it until the day he dies. Surprised, Car asks why she would ask for that. He explains that there are nobles in the outside world, and if it's revealed that you're a mage, you'll be used and discarded. Car says she was truly wise, which surprises our boy. He says he's shocked, as he thought Car would say she was just being overprotective. But Car insists his mother wasn't wrong. Mages possess great power, and great power inevitably attracts conflict. About 20 years ago, there was a massive war between two giant noble houses. It was between House Arabian, which he served, and the great House Zaha. Many people died in that war. Out of about 3,000 Arabian knights, nearly 1,000 died. That's basically a third of their forces. Sadly, everyone close to him was part of that third. His friend Denver, who said he'd open a laundry after the war. His teacher Hartman, who always scolded him, saying he had much to learn, and his beloved family, his wife and son. They were all massacred by House Zaha, and he was the only survivor. That's why his mother was right, in a way. A knight's life can disappear much faster than a commoner's, but there was one thing she was wrong about, and that was his aptitude. Curious, Torin asks what he means. Car explains that while it's embarrassing to say in his current state, he is a very skilled knight. Yet the boy easily destroyed the monster Spectre that even he couldn't defeat. His potential isn't just that of a knight, he's at least on the level of the nobility. Among them, his aptitude is definitely high level, and our boy doesn't seem to have a reaction because he's quite unusual. He mentions his mother said his father was a knight and asks if that was a lie. Car says that on rare occasions, a child weaker than a knight is born to nobles, or a child with noble class talent is born to knights. In that sense, he thinks it's better for him to leave this mountain and explore the world. Our boy asks why, and he says it's because humans are more than just knights and nobles, and they aren't the masters of this world yet. He apologizes for rambling and continues. The thing is, he doesn't know much about magic. So he explains that a lineage ability is a trait nobles inherit from their ancestors, the Freya, and if he has such an ability, that's what separates nobles from knights. He asks if there were any spells that seemed too easy or simple when he used magic, or any incredible skills he didn't need magic to activate. Our boy says it's not just that he's strong. Car explains that just by having mana, a mage's physical abilities become stronger. So our boy mentions he has a good sense of smell and is good at throwing stones. Car says if his sense of smell is that good, it could be a lineage ability. And being skilled with throwing weapons is a trait of House Arabian, but it's a fairly common one. He asks the boy to tell him more. After talking and analyzing things for a while, Car says he understands. Our boy asks why he's reacting that way. Car looks obviously very sad. He says he thinks he knows which house is responsible for his abilities. Curious, our boy asks which house it is, and he says it's a great house known as the Pursuers or Hunters. House Zaha, the same one that fought the war against House Arabian. This surprises our boy, because now he's basically the enemy. Or at least he's part of the bloodline that was his enemy. Thinking about House Zaha, our boy says Car seems down because he's from the same lineage as his enemies. Nervously, he wonders what he should say, and if he should apologize. But he knows these were the actions of relatives he never even met. Car tells him that he doesn't need to be so worried, since he didn't even participate in the war. Our boy feels a bit uncomfortable and says still. But Car interrupts, saying this is a matter for adults. If they try to wash away blood with more blood, the war will never end. Our boy asks if he doesn't regret it. Car asks what exactly he means, and he asks about telling him to explore the world. Car says if he leaves the mountain and seeks power, he'll inevitably join House Zaha since he has such extraordinary skills, but he trusts him. Our boy asks what he means, and Car says he's talking about the kindness within him, since he saved him even though it meant revealing an identity he had hidden his whole life. In fact, if someone like him joins House Zaha and rises to a high position, maybe he can prevent a terrible war like that from happening again. Our boy thinks about this. Car says they don't need to talk about it anymore, and it's not like he's decided to join House Zaha right now or anything, but our protagonist says his thoughts are very clear, and he wants to try leaving the mountain. Car says he's thought it through, but our boy says not right now, he'll leave once Car's wounds have healed. Car says he's very kind and that he's only slightly scratched, but he's still a great person. And Car takes the time to teach the boy a few things. For example, to use magic, you need mana. That's why mana is often called the key to omnipotence. It's not actually omnipotence as the name suggests, but to use magic, you still need mana that matches it. Our boy asks what the standard is for mana that matches magic. Car says he'll explain. The difficulty of magic is determined by 3 factors. The first is lineage, the second is affinity, and the third is causality. The first is basically determined by the bloodline you were born into. This applies to most nobles who aren't knights. For example, it would be hard for him to heal his wounds with magic. Our boy agrees. But he tells him that for those of the Southern Revista lineage, healing others is something they can do without any training. That's the power that comes from lineage. Our boy asks about the second one, affinity. He says you can think of it as familiarity. It's a concept of how easily someone can perform tasks if they're used to them or prefer doing them. Torin asks if it's like when he made a fireball while thinking about throwing a stone. Car says exactly, and very likely if he had just made a simple flame, it wouldn't have reached that speed and power. Then comes the last and most important one, causality. Even he doesn't understand it very well. He asks our boy what would happen if he tried to kill him directly using mana. Our protagonist says probably just some bright light in his head. Car says that's exactly the phenomenon that occurs because of causality. When there's no proper cause and the goal is too difficult, this rule is applied. Our boy says he mostly understands. So if he wanted to kill him, instead of wasting mana wishing for death, he'd have to find a cause for his death, like creating or throwing flames. Creating and throwing flames is more natural than just lighting one. Surprised and excited, Car says that's exactly right, and he could be a magic scholar instead of anything else. But our boy says he can control normal things according to his wishes. He asks if that's why magic beasts need something like that, and Car says that's because of their mana. The two continue talking, while the sheep outside looks very cute watching everything. Our boy says later that magic really isn't that easy. Car says an excellent mage doesn't just know how to use mana, but also the principles and situations behind it. Torin asks if the Zaha lineage has any special abilities. Car says they are skilled in stealth and tracking. He asks him to try it once. Our boy says okay. He thinks about not wanting to be seen by others and pours mana into that thought. He also wants his sounds and smells to be undetectable and does the same with his mana. Just like that, he vanishes from the room. This surprises even Karo because it worked so easily. Car says he got it on his first try and he can't see him at all. But just a second later, our boy reappears. Kawar says it's been a long time since he last saw that ability. It's truly spine-chilling, and during the war, the Knights of Arabian were terrified of it. Then, our boy says it seems like an unfair ability, but Kawar tells him it doesn't make him invincible, and he should remember that. Now, he's going to teach him some magic training methods. Then, our boy asks if he's teaching too much to a mage from an enemy family, but Kawar says he saved his life and took good care of him. He asks if he doesn't remember what he said. He really trusts him. Some time passes, and an old villager asks what he's talking about, and if he's really going to sell the sheep and just leave. So, who will be the shepherd from now on, and how can he decide something like this without even consulting them? But our protagonist says they should figure out how to find a shepherd for themselves. He asks if it really matters to them what he does with his belongings. Anyway, he hopes they can buy the sheep at a fair price. When he releases them all and leaves, they can even try to catch them, but he warns them that it will be very difficult. The village chief thinks this guy is someone who keeps his word, and he definitely won't gain anything by making him angry. So he says it's fine and that he understands. He tells him that whether he stays or leaves is up to him, he doesn't care. With that, he leaves the village along with Kawar. He mentions that now that he thinks about it, those villagers still owe him compensation. He asks if he should go collect it, but Kawar says he has no intention of taking anything, saying it was the boy who captured the magic beast, and he didn't really do much. After walking for a while, it seems they have to part ways. Kawar apologizes for turning down the offer to travel together, saying he just feels better on his own. On the other hand, our boy tells him not to worry and thanks him for everything. Kawar tells Turan to take care of himself and live as long as possible. Our boy calls him Elder and hopes they can meet again in happier times. And so the boy watched Kawar's figure fade into the distance for a long time. He realized this later, or perhaps it was because he didn't want the old knight to speak to him so formally. Even though he never lacked affection from his mother, the boy secretly always missed a father figure, someone who could be a role model for the kind of man he wanted to become. And so, our boy begins his adventure walking alone. as a solitary traveler, basically a nomad who is also a mage. As he walks through the desert past giant rocks that look like mountains, he runs into some people and wonders if they are nomadic merchants who go from village to village. This is actually good because he can ask them for directions. The old man in front asks why he's blocking their path. Our boy says he's traveling alone and asks where the nearest city is. The old man says if he follows the road they just came from, he'll reach a city called Moray. Our boy says he understands and thanks him. As he passes by them, one of them tells him to wait. He asks if he's just going to leave after getting the information he wanted. Turan asks what he means. The guy responds that when you receive something, you should give something in return, as they all draw their weapons. The leader tells him to drop his bag first. Our boy asks if they are bandits, and one guy asks what he can do about it. Their leader, the old man from before, calls him careless, saying they're in a desert where no one would ever find his body. He tells him to drop the backpack and leave while they're being peaceful, since killing him and taking his clothes would be too much unnecessary work. Our boy says he understands, so they're bandits who even kill people. Remembering what he learned from Kawar, he says it's actually a good thing they came to him, because now he can use them as practice partners. After Turan says that, the old man calls him a lunatic for talking like he's a mage, while the other henchmen just laugh at him. But our boy quickly casts a wind spell, throwing them all into the air. While he thinks that instead of generating wind from the air, he can form it in his hand and amplify it using much less mana. He didn't know he could create such strong wind with so little mana, but it worked out. After they all hit the ground in fear, they wonder what on earth is going on. But soon after, our boy opens a bottle and takes out a few drops of water. He creates an object that looks like something very strange. If you know what it is, comment down below. Soon after, they form into water crystals. After he hardens them with magic, he attacks the first one, piercing his body in several places. After the first one dies, our boy wonders if this spell was meant to be useful when water is scarce. But honestly, just using stones seems much faster and more powerful. Watching this, the leader is terrified. He says he didn't know he was a mage and begs for forgiveness just this once. He says they'll do whatever he wants. But while the old man was distracting him, the other three attack him from behind while the old man begs him to stop. Sensing this, our boy gives a powerful kick to the ground. Several spikes form from the earth, piercing the three bandits and killing them instantly. Watching this, the old leader is in shock, thinking that this is impossible, and all his henchmen are dead, killed by a single mage he thought was just some random kid. Soon, our protagonist approaches and says he wants to ask him something. The old man says he can ask anything, and he'll answer. He asks why they attacked him without a plan, since any traveler could be a mage. The guy says it's because he bowed his head. Our confused boy asks what he means by that. The bandit explains that even when they spoke rudely to him, he bowed and greeted them. So, they assumed he was just an ordinary person. Our boy thanks him, calling it a very useful lesson. And happy to have helped, the bandit asks if he'll really spare him now. But as he looks up, several water droplets are right on his forehead. Our boy remembers Kaor's words when he said that from now on he would meet many different people. There was something he wanted to tell him. Never show mercy to scum like bandits. People who don't hesitate to hurt others just for profit don't deserve pity or the right to live. He was about to explain why, but our protagonist interrupted, saying he understood perfectly. He knew exactly what it was about. A life spared out of pity could end up hurting other good people. After killing the rest, our boy notes that he's already wasted too much time there. Now, it's time to leave. And as he walked through the desert, he found the road used by merchant caravans, marked by wheel tracks in the sand. He simply followed those tracks. But as he searched for the city, a few things began to weigh on his mind. It wasn't just things, but the people he had killed along the way. Did he feel guilty? Yes, he did, but he couldn't let them go, because he remembered Kaor's warning that some people will decide to rob or kill for profit without a second thought. And those same people, if left alive out of pity, could target others at any time. As the desert wheel marks faded with time, Turan's chaotic heart gradually calmed down while he recalled Kaor's teachings. And that's how he finally arrived in a new world. Observing from a distance, he realized it was indeed a large city. He was surprised by the place, which was actually a small town called Muray. Walking through the streets, it's the first time he's seen so many people at once. Even the architecture is completely different compared to his old village. Now it really feels like he's in a big city. Walking through the center, he heads toward a fruit vendor. When he gets there, the vendor welcomes him and asks what he can do for him. But our boy says he isn't a customer, remembering that Kaor told him that if he reached a city and needed to rest, he should look for a tavern. No matter where it is, there's usually one in town. But the annoyed vendor tells him to leave since he isn't buying anything. Turan is completely lost, wondering why the man is so rude. He wonders if it's a hidden rule of cities where you're forced to buy fruit before asking a question. So, he asks how much the fruit costs. The vendor says it's 2 pite. As he sets the money aside, the vendor mentions that he looks like a foreigner, so he probably doesn't know the value. And other coins are valid too. Our boy then asks where he can find the tavern, and the guy tells him to go down the street behind the cloak shop and turn left. There he'll see a blue roof, which is the biggest tavern in town. And after a while, our boy arrives at the tavern, where he's greeted by a pretty girl named Lena. She stares at him, saying he's a very handsome customer, but our boy just asks how much it is per night. She says it's 16 tupite. Our boy agrees to stay, but more importantly, there's something he wants to ask. He wants to know if there are any monsters nearby with a bounty on their heads. The girl asks what he means by monsters. Meanwhile, Turan knows he needs to kill monsters and absorb their mana to get stronger, plus it can earn him some money. He asks why she isn't answering. Calling him sir very politely, she says that nothing in this world is free. So after he buys a few drinks, she explains the city hall to him. Confused, he asks what that is. She asks if he really doesn't know what a city hall is, wondering if he's truly from the countryside. Regardless, she tells him the city hall is where public matters are handled, and the officials there are hired by the city lord. And it's probably closed by now, but he can stop by tomorrow if he wants to find a hunting contract. She curiously asks if he's a monster hunter. Our boy asks what that is, and she explains that if a normal person hunts monsters, they can supposedly become a mage. She wants to know if he wants to become a mage too. But to their surprise, someone behind him comments that anyone who believes in that kind of superstition is an idiot. Then, a tall man taps his shoulder and asks what he means by superstition, saying it's a very real fact. This man is a monster hunter named Madan, and he tells our protagonist he's seen it with his own eyes. The surprised girl says she's glad Madan is still alive. He tells her he said he wouldn't die until he became a mage. Meanwhile, our boy just asks him to take his hand off him. The guy, embarrassed, apologizes, but more importantly, Turan wants to hear more about what he just said. Madan asks if he means the part about becoming a mage by hunting monsters. He explains that mages get stronger by hunting monsters, and by that same principle, if a normal person kills monsters, they can become a mage too. The four of them are hunting monsters to become mages. Turan asks if that means any of them are mages yet, but Madan says not a chance. In this city, there's only the Lord and his 3 mages. He asks Turan, looking a bit uncomfortable, if he said he was a monster hunter. From what he can see, his gear is too poor for that, and he asks where his weapon is. Our boy points to his tool for throwing stones. The man asks if he uses a slingshot to kill monsters, but judging by how worn it is, it looks like he fights a lot. Our boy confirms this, saying it's good for quickly firing something the size of an egg. Turan mentions he can hunt monster rabbits and foxes quite well with it. To be honest, Madan was going to say they needed another marksman, so he asks if Turan is interested in hunting with them. But our boy says no, thank you. At the end of the day, in his room, he thinks there's no reason to hunt with those guys, since they don't even know each other, and he also doesn't want them to know he's a mage. Still, he can't believe he actually left his village, and he wonders what will happen from now on. But while he was trying to sleep, he heard a knock on the door and asked who it was. Once again, another memory of Kaor came to mind. He had asked if he should stay alert even in a tavern, and Kaor said yes, because cities aren't necessarily safe, and he should never lower his guard. So, our boy goes to the door with his magic ready. As soon as he opens it, he sees the person. He wonders what Lena is doing there. With a little smile on her face, she asks if he's already asleep. She just stopped by because she thought he might be cold, so she came to warm him up a bit. Turan, looking confused, asks what she's talking about. What does she mean by warm him up? Meanwhile, the girl gives him a very suggestive look. She stares at him, saying it's exactly what it looks like, but he asks how exactly it's what it looks like, and she says that for a small amount of money, she'll do whatever he wants. He asks what if he doesn't want anything, but she tells him not to lie, saying it's written all over his face as she grabs him. But looking at him, what's written on his face is the expression of a Buddha, clearly showing he's a virgin. She realizes that in the end, he really doesn't want anything to do with her. But once again, another memory of Kaor enters his mind. He remembered when Kaor desperately told him not to do this. He always had to be careful with tavern workers, as many of them carry diseases. Mages have high resistance to diseases, so it's not a problem for them. But if he isn't careful, he could pass it to another woman he actually cares about. So he shouldn't let desire take over his body. Therefore, our boy thinks that cities are also difficult places to live. Meanwhile, Lena comes down the stairs, furious but also embarrassed for him. The protagonist thinks back to the fruit stand that asked for money for information. Now, Lena thinks he's selling his body for money. To think people would put a price on small talk and information. Big cities are truly ignorant. But as he was thinking about that, he overheard a conversation from that group from earlier. One of them asked why the leader invited that guy, saying he seemed pretty useless. The others agreed, saying he talks too much and would be perfect to use as bait. But their leader says it's because the boy reminds him of himself. When he was younger, seeing him hunt with a weapon like that made him worried. If that guy is even 1% of what he used to be, he'll definitely survive. His friends just say he's too nice. Our boy is happy to realize that Madan, apparently, isn't such a bad guy. Maybe big cities aren't as ignorant as he thought they were. Moving on to the next day, our boy heads toward the town hall. Approaching the counter, a mustached official asks how he can help him. Our boy asks if he's an official, and the guy sarcastically asks what he looks like. Turan tells him he wants to hunt monsters, but the official is confused and asks what he means by monsters. Another memory of Kawa enters his mind, reminding him of when he said the world wouldn't be kind to him. Our boy asked why, and it was because he needed to think carefully. There's no reason for people to just be kind. If you want people to treat you well, the method is simple. He must reveal that he's a mage. Only then will normal people treat him like a deity. But since he hasn't revealed he's a mage yet, the official tells him he can't take the document with him. He can look at it and then return it. Our boy asks about this crow monster. The guy gets irritated and asks if he doesn't recognize it, or if it looks like a cat to him. He knows it's likely he'll kill it. But if he does, he must bring the corpse back to the city. If a mage doesn't disperse it with mana, it will become a specter. If you kill a monster and leave the body behind, it's a crime and you'll be executed. But our boy clearly knows this already. He also knows what happens when a monster becomes a specter, and he certainly can't repeat that mistake. Still curious, he asks about the knights and if they don't hunt monsters. The official asks if he thinks they have time for that. A knight's job is to maintain public order within the city. They can't just go out and hunt monsters. That's for delinquents like him to handle. He watches Turan leave, commenting that unfortunately, another body will just rot outside the city, but that same day, he had to eat his words. When our boy delivered the crow he had asked about, he and the other officials said it was impossible. How the hell did he bring it back so fast? He asks Turan if he killed it alone, and our boy confirms that he did. He curiously asks how he receives the reward, and another official runs off, saying he'll get it right now, and he hands over the reward, saying he must have worked hard and should get some rest. Our boy thanks him. After he leaves, the three keep staring at the crow, commenting on its incredible state. Even the wings are intact. They didn't even know it was possible to bring back a crow in that condition. But they soon realize that Turan is still there watching them. They ask why he hasn't left yet. Our protagonist wants to know if there are other monsters to hunt, which surprises the officials. They ask if he really wants to hunt even more. After a long day of hunting, Lena tells him that these are the most expensive items on the menu. She never dreamed that someone like him could defeat a monster, let alone 30 monsters in just 3 days. He definitely earned a lot of money. Meanwhile, our boy eats the entire feast by himself. He tells Lena that money isn't his only goal. He knows that his real goal is the mana from the monsters. Thanks to that, he has definitely become much stronger. Compared to when he was with Kel, his mana has increased significantly. But he can feel a certain limit. With only the mana from weak monsters, it will be very difficult to get any stronger. After a while, he asks her if she stole some of the food, but she says no, he ate it all himself. She says he's skinny, but definitely eats like a pig. The cook nearby mentions it's been a while since he prepared such a banquet and is glad he enjoyed it. Our boy says it was truly delicious, and the cook promises it'll be even better next time. However, as our boy was heading up to his room, someone grabbed him and stopped him, saying he was eating something delicious all by himself. Calling him skinny, the guy says he heard he's been making a lot of money lately and should donate some to them. But at that moment, the guy gets hit right in the nose. Our boy asks if he wanted a donation. This is the only donation he has for him. The other hunter quickly moves to attack him, telling him not to get cocky, but our protagonist dodges easily. With just his arm raised, the guy slams his head right into it, after he falls to the ground in pain. The other one charges at him with a wooden stool, but easily, our boy stops the stool and then flicks him on the forehead, sending him flying. At the same time, Lena is absolutely furious. She starts screaming that they can't fight in the tavern. After a while, Madan had to go to our boy to apologize. He gave those guys a major scolding. He asks for forgiveness and says it will never happen again. The problem is they've been very short on money lately, and he thinks they got jealous when they saw him. He orders the two of them to apologize, and they both do so, embarrassed. But Turan curiously asks if things are difficult for them. Midan says they are just limited really. In about 3 days they won't be able to pay for their stay anymore, but he says that's his own problem to deal with. To Midan's surprise, our boy offers him some money. Surprised, he asks why he's doing this. Turan says it's payment for the kindness he showed when he tried to recruit him. Midan asks how he knew. Our boy says nothing is free and what he wants is information. Midan excitedly says he has plenty of information and will tell him everything right now. The next day, our boy was observing the city from above, thinking this might be his last hunt in this town. Midan gave him a lot of information about the next city, so now it's time to go. From what he heard yesterday, he had much more useful information than expected. Midan is truly a good person. He's just not as experienced as Cow, but that only makes him more pure and kind. While he was thinking about this, he smelled something strange and realized it was the scent of blood. He mentally prayed that he was wrong. Unfortunately, when he arrived at the scene, he saw everything. One of Midan's group had a deep gash in his stomach. He knows this person is part of that group, so it seems it's true. And Midan ended up dead. He goes to the body and asks what on earth happened. Then our boy looks to the side and sees one of them is still alive. He says it was a rabbit. Our boy asks what he means by a rabbit. Soon, he notices a rabbit monster eating the remains of one of his friends. Midan, a rabbit that looked cute, turns out to be a demonic rabbit, staring at our boy with blood on its mouth. Our boy notices its monstrous speed. He quickly manages to dodge the attack. He realizes it almost hit him. This rabbit is definitely not normal. He loads a stone into his slingshot. With all his strength, he fires it at the rabbit. Like a homing shot, it wasn't just one stone but several. But surprisingly, that rabbit managed to block the attack and break the stones. Our boy realizes it's used to defending against projectile techniques, so he'll have to change his approach. The rabbit charges toward him again, preparing to strike him. But to the rabbit's shock, our boy uses his Zara ability and vanishes from sight. A moment later, he reappears right behind it. He drives a dagger straight into its neck. After the attack, he takes a few steps back. The incredibly fast rabbit charges once more, trying to bite him, but it only hits a tree. Not only does it hit it, it slices it in half with a single bite. The battle continues as the rabbit keeps trying to land a hit. But Turan evades every time, and after a long time, the exhausted rabbit, dripping with blood, collapses to the ground, dead. Finally, our boy reappears and walks calmly toward it. Then, he reaches out and absorbs the monster rabbit's mana. He notices that the amount of mana being absorbed is completely different from before. It's even more than the leopard he first encountered. As he does this, Madan's surviving friend says he can't believe it, asking if he's really a mage. Our boy says yes, and the man curiously asks why he hid his identity. Our boy asks if any of the four have family he can give their belongings to, but the man tearfully says no. He looks at his boss, who is his only family. Our protagonist also looks at Madan, remembering what he said yesterday about a nearby city called Orin and a place called the Library. Curious, Turan asks what a library is, and Madan explains it's a place with thousands of books. He noticed that the moment books were mentioned, Turan seemed much more interested. Our boy asks if he really looked that way, but Madan mentions that not everyone can enter there. When our boy asks how to get in, Madan says that apparently only mages can enter. Turan says he understands, thinking that he should be able to get in. Because of that, he says his mind is made up. He's going to the big city mentioned, Orin. After burying Madan and his friends, he feels quite downcast, but he says he hopes they're happy wherever they are now. Some time passes, and our traveler, Turan, finally arrives at the city of Orin. He feels almost embarrassed that he was so impressed by the small town of Morin, because this place is completely different. This is the great city of Orin. He didn't expect so many people to be trying to enter, but it's clearly very busy. The guards watching everyone must be inspecting for wanted criminals. It's exactly what you'd expect from a big city, with a much more organized system. Soon it's Turan's turn, but to his surprise, he stopped. He asks what's wrong, and the guard says he's forbidden from entering because his clothes are so filthy. He asks if he shouldn't at least clean up first. So, our boy goes and takes a bath, and finally manages to enter the city. The first place he goes, of course, is the library Madan told him about. He's amazed by how massive the tower is, thinking it must have been built with magic. He approaches the gate and asks for permission to enter, but two guards stop him. Turan says he wants to go in, but the guard says the library is for mages only. Our protagonist says he is a mage, and the guy asks what he means. He asks if he really wants to die for impersonating a mage, and if he can believe he's seeing such a lunatic. There's no way someone like him is a mage. With that, he reaches out his hand toward Turan and begins to activate a spell. Seeing this, our boy remembers Kawar telling him that mages can recognize each other by sensing mana, and can even tell if someone is stronger than them. So seeing this, he activates his magic for the guard to inspect it. Feeling an immense pressure, the man falls to the ground in fear. He tells his friend he's okay, but looking at Turan, he realizes he's definitely no ordinary mage. This man must be at least a noble. He quickly stands up, introducing himself as Kania, a knight of House Valas, and asks which house Turan is from. Our boy asks if he really has to say all that just to enter, but the guard says no. He nervously explains that to use the library, he needs permission from the Master of Voltus. Turan asks what he should do, and the guard says he'll contact House Voltus immediately. And so later that day, our boy was taken to House Voltus. He thought it would be a much simpler process. But apparently, it's not that simple at all. Now he doesn't understand how it came to this, with him being washed by several maids. Not feeling very comfortable with the situation, he asks them to stop. He asks if it's okay for him to wash himself, but the nervous maids say that if they fail to serve their esteemed guest, they will be punished. So, our boy gives up and tells them to do whatever they want. And so after that very uncomfortable bath, our boy is finally all cleaned up and dressed. Even the maid blushes while staring at him, saying he looks incredible in those clothes. Our boy, not understanding her reaction, asks if there's something strange on his face. He's finally dressed like a noble now, but the maids, embarrassed, say no, it's just that they got lost in his beauty. She asks for his forgiveness, but our protagonist says there's nothing to forgive. However, they ask that, please, he shouldn't speak to them so casually, or they might get into trouble. While they were talking, someone finally entered the room. She stared at Torin and asked what was going on. Apparently, this is the guest who arrived looking like a beggar. But after a bath and good clothes, he now looks like a prince. Her butler, right behind her, tells the young lady she shouldn't say things like that. Our protagonist introduces himself as Torin, and she says her name is Zella. She then asks which house he belongs to, but he says that for personal reasons he'd like to keep that private, surprised. She asks if he's serious. It's a real shame, but in her mind she realizes he's hiding who he truly is. So, she decides she's going to have a little fun. With that, she activates her magic, trying to intimidate Torin. She wants him to show her his true mana. After she releases this heavy pressure onto him, our boy quickly activates his power. He shows his aura as well, quickly countering hers. This surprises everyone else, but after a few moments, both auras dissipate. Our boy just lets out a sigh. On the other hand, the girl is very excited, realizing that this kid is actually strong. Because of this, she simply calls him Sir and asks if he would like to marry her, which leaves our protagonist completely lost, not knowing how to respond to her. Then she laughs at his face and asks why he's reacting like that, as she thought he'd just be surprised. But she mentions that the position of her spouse is actually open right now, so he can take some time to think about it. Right after that, she simply leaves, leaving our boy completely confused, wondering what on earth just happened. But a moment later, he looks at his own hands and notices they are shaking. Her magic power is at least on his level. He wonders if she is just an ordinary human. After that, later on, our protagonist goes to the office of her father. This old man is the Lord of Orin, Rogvaltus. He welcomes the young noble and asks for his name. Our protagonist says his name is Torin. The Lord then asks if he wants to use the library. Since many people have come after hearing strange rumors, he warns him beforehand. There is no ancient magic or tricks to increase magic power in the library. But Torin quickly says that's fine, as he has no interest in any of that. The Lord says that if he wants, there's nothing he wouldn't give him, and there isn't a single family secret inside anyway. But he says it's late now and asks him to rest for today, and they will see each other again tomorrow. Torin says he won't forget the kindness of the master of the house. The next day, our boy can finally enter the library, being greeted by two guards who welcome him to the Celestial Library. And so Torin finally enters the library and realizes that it is very, very large, with several staircases inside, a tower completely filled with books. And to Torin's surprise, someone approaches him, saying it must be his first time seeing this, and this excited little girl says she is the librarian there. She says that, according to the master's orders, she will explain the rules for using the place, and the rules are simple. While our boy listens to her, he's surprised to see that the librarian is a child, but she simply starts explaining that Rule 1 is compensation for damages. Rule 2 is that it's forbidden to take books out. She says she will keep monitoring him while he uses the library. Our boy says okay, but asks her to step back a bit while he reads, as it's a bit strange. He then asks if she's read many of the books there since she's the librarian. She says of course, and if he needs anything, it's her job to help. She asks what he needs: romance, history, whatever he wants, or maybe something more mature. This leaves our protagonist very confused by this genre he's never heard of before. He simply says he wants to gain basic knowledge about the world, and that's all he needs. In the next second, several books appear. They are about basic knowledge of this world. She says many books here are hundreds of years old and won't be suitable for general knowledge, but this section might help. Our boy quickly thanks her. So, our boy finally picks up a book. He recognizes that this is the famous thing called a book. As soon as he opens it, he realizes it's actually incredible. He had never seen anything like it before. As time passed, Torin repeated the same routine every day, which was spending the whole day reading in the library. Only now did he begin to understand the geography of this world, as well as the various races' mage etiquette and how items were processed. He even learned about monsters and relics of the ancient empire. As he built up this knowledge piece by piece, the world that was once unknown to him became clear and vivid. Time passed, and one day, the head of the house called for him, asking if he had been using the library well. Our boy says yes, it's great. But the head of the house says that even though he treats him like a noble and let him use the library as an act of kindness, he would like that kindness to be repaid. Our boy asks what he needs, and the Lord says a beast recently appeared in North Oral and is attacking visitors. Our boy asks if he wants him to hunt the beast. The Lord says 4 knights who went to subdue it were devoured and never returned, so he thinks a noble will have to intervene. But he can only mobilize 2 at the moment. If Torin joins them, they will have 3 people, which will be much safer. Our boy says he understands, thinking that protecting people is a mage's duty. However, he thinks it's a bit strange, as mages usually wouldn't get involved in this. The Lord explains it's because the North Road where they entered is Oral's only trade route. It's been blocked for 10 days, so they need to clear it quickly. Torin thinks that if it's been 10 days, he should go to Oral now and then come back to read his books again. So, that same day, our boy, along with 2 mages and a squad of knights, sets off toward Oral. The girl in front of him comments that her father is truly incredible, and she never thought he would involve a guest in hunting a magical beast. She asks if they aren't trustworthy, but quickly says it's fine since her father is just very dramatic. Beside her, a young man says that calling the master of the house dramatic is a bit much. He says those words are an exaggeration, but she tells him not to worry about it. He stays quiet, staring at his sister before turning to our boy to ask if this is his first time. He introduces himself as Marvin Baltus and says it's a pleasure to meet him. After the introductions, the young Baltus girl is in the middle of the forest, feeling annoyed and wanting to go home to rest in her room. Meanwhile, Marvin asks Turan if he's interested in his sister, but our boy quickly says no. Marvin says that's good, but suddenly something happens. 2 knights up ahead tell everyone to stop. When they do, they see a broken carriage. An old knight wonders if it was a magical beast, and another agrees, noting it was attacked on the road leading north. From the back, our boy starts observing everything, and among the wreckage, he spots a hand. He tells everyone that it was a monkey. This leaves the girl confused, asking what he means. He explains that the shape of the hand belongs to a monkey. It seems it attacked the merchants and headed into the forest, so he suggests they track it. The girl asks how they're supposed to track it, as she can barely use the magic she grew up with. She asks if Marvin can do it, but he says he can't either, and asks the knights. Just then, our boy says he'll take a look. Curious, she asks if he's part of the group, but he says he's used to tracking. He picks up a piece of cloth, smells it, and activates exploration magic. As soon as he opens his eyes, he begins to see the monkey's trail. He tells everyone it's this way. After walking for a bit, he says the beast stopped there to wash itself. The girl wonders if a beast would really wash itself to hide its scent, but Turan says it probably just felt like taking a bath. At that moment, Turan senses the monster's trail again. He warns everyone that the monster is behind them. Suddenly, a large gorilla appears, attacking them all. It quickly kills several knights. While Turan dodges the attack, the two nobles simply use the knights as meat shields. They toss them aside like trash, and our boy realizes his mother's words were right. A moment later, he orders them to attack. The remaining squads of knights begin to strike the massive monster. Realizing it's outnumbered, the monster starts running for its life. As they chase it, our boy picks up several stones, and using his slingshot, he fires at the monster. The stone zips past the girl, who is shocked by its power. The rock pierces through the monkey, killing it instantly. When the two mages turn around, they see our boy in a cool pose, having easily taken down the beast. He farms even more aura from the kill. The monkey falls nearly dead. The girl quickly activates her power, a monstrous fire ability in the shape of a flaming serpent. It makes the monkey explode instantly. Watching this, our boy is surprised, realizing this is the lineage power of the pyromaniacs in the Baltus family. The knights finally announce it's over. The girl says Turan was incredible, admitting she felt a chill when that stone flew past. The guy next to her asks if she was scared, but she just tells him to shut up, since he was the one screaming like a little girl. He tries to defend himself, while the surviving knights are left broken and wounded. Observing the scene, the girl comments that it's total chaos, but she's relieved they aren't dead. However, Turan knows better. Even with a surprise attack, they could have avoided such serious injuries. Considering magic makes their bodies stronger, they should have been much tougher than ordinary knights. Yet, without hesitation, the nobles use the weak as meat shields. Marvin notices Turan staring and asks why he's looking at him like that. Our protagonist simply says it's nothing. Azella then tells the guest to come over and absorb the mana. The three of them begin absorbing the monkey's mana. Our boy recalls from his books that even if multiple people absorb it at once, the level of strengthening doesn't seem to decrease. After a while, the girl says she can't absorb anymore, reaching her growth limit. Marvin says he's reached his. The girl now understands why her father sent him as a guest, given his magic mastery and mana levels that rival her own. She's impressed that a noble who hasn't even hit his growth limit is this strong. Later, they finally start heading back to their territory. Marvin tells Turan that without him, they never would have caught it. From the tracking to the final blow, it was all thanks to him. Turan says it was nothing, but regrets being too late to notice the beast's detection skills, allowing it to attack first. Marvin asks what he means by detection skills, and our boy explains that awakened abilities vary based on the beast's physical traits. The monkey they defeated had large hands and eyes, meaning it likely had the ability to throw things with force and see through the forest from a distance. Marvin says he's truly incredible for noticing that so quickly. Our boy mentions he read it in a bestiary at the library. Marvin is surprised, calling the library an old place where nobody goes. The girl says she went there once out of curiosity, but the books were too difficult, so she left without finishing even one. Our boy suggests asking the librarian for easier books next time. Confused, Azella asks what librarian he's talking about. She asks if such a person even exists, which leaves our boy feeling a bit lost. At the end of the day, our protagonist finally returns to the library, and the girl welcomes him back. He finally realizes he was careless, thinking that no knight or commoner would ever dare call a noble by their name. In this city, nobles are only addressed as your nobility. A librarian existing here is definitely strange. Our boy simply asks how she knows his name. She's immediately surprised by how suspicious he is, but then she gives a little smile and asks if he only just noticed. He admits that's the case, and she explains she saw his license and learned his name from there. She scans the library through his eyes. Curious, Turan asks what he should call her. She says she doesn't have a name, so he can call her whatever he likes, maybe something cute like my love, but Turan just calls her Miss Librarian, and she complains that he's being too formal. He's suddenly become very polite, which is strange since he spent days ordering her around. He's definitely changed, but Turan denies ever doing that and asks her to keep her distance, as it's a bit uncomfortable. Still, he's curious about her and asks the Miss Librarian if she's a mage from the ancient empire. She says no, she isn't even human, she's more like a spirit. She explains that when a soul inhabits something living, it's a living spirit. When it inhabits something dead, it's a spirit of the dead. but when it inhabits something neither alive nor dead, it's just a spirit. In other words, she is the library itself. This appearance is just to make communication easier, based on Turan's own tastes. She even teases that his taste is a bit strange. Flustered, our boy tells her not to lie, but she insists it's the truth, saying she's basically like a reflection in the water. He begins to observe her closely. Then he reaches out to touch her, which makes her uncomfortable, and she tells him how weird that is. He apologizes, but she tells him he has no idea how annoying it is, especially since she can't use force directly against intruders. If she could, she'd punish everyone who handles the library's books carelessly. Our boy notes that it seems the head of the Valtis family didn't know she existed. In fact, maybe no one who used this library ever knew about her. She explains that it's because no one until now was qualified to notice her. Her creator made it so only those who reached a certain level could recognize her. This means only Turan can see her, and she asks if he finds that romantic. He asks what she means by level, and she explains it's about the bloodlines mages always talk about. Still confused, Turan asks if she can tell him about his bloodline, but she says he should ask his parents. He tells her he's an orphan. Excitedly, she asks if he wants her to stay, but first he has to let her examine his body. Surprised, he asks what she means by that. She just starts laughing in a way that really annoys him. Suddenly, she thrusts her hand into his stomach, startling Turan. She laughs, saying they're now connected. He tells her to stop saying such weird things, but he realizes it didn't actually hurt. She tells him he has a few minor traits, but his main bloodline is that of a stalker and hunter. She believes this is a characteristic of the Zaha family, and our boy says he understands. But then the librarian's eyes widen as she realizes there's something else. It's mixed in. Surprised, Turan asks what she means by mixed. She explains that it means he's the result of two people with different bloodlines. Curious, he asks what the other one is, but she doesn't know because it's still sealed. She says it's not uncommon for a sealed bloodline to appear when lineages combine, and it will naturally unlock as he gets stronger. Hearing this, our boy starts thinking about his mother. She was far too polite and cultured to be a simple commoner. Perhaps she was a descendant of a noble, even if the bloodline had thinned to the point of having no magical power. Grateful, he bows to her and says he understands. She tells him if he's that thankful, he should stay for another month. After discovering the spirit's true identity, Turan didn't just read on his own. He started asking her questions and seeking explanations. He asked if there were really so many invisible substances. The librarian knew everything, even from books that had been looted and lost for thousands of years. She showed him that if he suspended water in the air like this, he could see them directly. For Turan, learning the principles of nature directly from her was like finding a treasure. He discovered that many diseases are caused by microorganisms, and that decomposition happens because these germs feed on living things. He also learned about light refraction, heat generated by friction, and how living beings get injured and recover. That day, he decided to test decomposition by simply touching an apple. The apple instantly decomposed. Excited, he asked what she thought, and he noted how interesting it was. It's not that normal magic couldn't do this, but understanding the principle allowed him to use much less mana. He realized that just by changing how he perceived the world, his magic improved significantly. He commented that powerful families might monopolize this knowledge, as other mages knowing it would cost them their advantage. She says she now understands why people's knowledge has been declining over time, and that if what he says is true, it makes sense. Finally, after a month, our boy says it's time to leave. She asks why, and he explains that the owner of the place has started giving very clear signals. Hearing this, she starts crying, saying she doesn't want him to go, or at least he should take her with him. But he simply steps aside, letting her fall to the floor. Curious, he asks if she can even leave, but she says no. She asks if he can just stay, promising to take good care of him, but he politely declines. Pouting, she says she doesn't care anyway, and he explains that there are many legacies from the two gods on this continent. He says he'll check them out from time to time, as there might be a spirit who knows even more than she does. Then our boy leaves, promising to come back and visit. Refusing to even look at him, she says he can come whenever he wants. Or not, it doesn't matter. With a smile, he tells her they still have many books to read. A few days later, our boy finally sets off. He recalls the map he found in the library, which showed that the Airy Desert, the Zaha family's base, is east of Orin. He thinks that by going to Zaha, he can find clues about his parents and his own bloodline, and so, our boy began his journey to the Zaha territory. He felt no need to rush. If the clues were going to disappear, they would have in the last 18 years. If they were still there, they wouldn't vanish just because he arrived a little late. But during his walk, he came across something very strange. It was a large horse standing over a fallen man. Our boy wondered if that was a saddle. It seemed the creature wasn't a monster attacking, but rather a beast protecting the man. In front of the horse, two men are calling it a cursed demon, wondering how a mere pet could be so strong. Tora realizes the attack came from their side and sees two very strange figures standing there. The one on the left tells his partner to try and create an opening, while the other complains that it's easier said than done. Finally, Tora recognizes them as dark elves. At that moment, the two dark elves begin to cast their magic, while Tora realizes this is the necromancy he had read about in books. Suddenly, two monsters made of necromantic magic appear in front of the horse. Tora wonders if he should help, thinking the fallen man might have been the one who attacked the dark elves first. But then he notices that one of those dark elves is eating a human hand. The other elf asks whose hand it is and tells him to give her one as well. He just tells her to eat her own or take one from the guy they caught. Furious, Tora realizes they are cannibals. He immediately activates his stealth magic. Meanwhile, the elf mentions that the ones she killed were all men, so they were far too hairy. But before he can say another word, his companion's head is completely destroyed. The surviving elf is shocked and realizes they are under attack. She immediately summons her two beasts, but Tora is faster and launches an attack. However, she manages to block him using a goat monster. She starts screaming as he continues his assault on her. At that moment, her bull monster charges forward as if there were no tomorrow, smashing everything in its path. The elf finally realizes that Tora is using stealth magic. She taunts him, saying she wants to see how much longer he can keep hiding like that. She then summons another monster, one that looks like a fox, which begins to track him easily. The fox's power begins to mark Tora's body, making it easy for the dark elf to find him. She shouts that she has finally found that cursed demon. She orders her two monsters to move in for the kill, but at that moment Tora closes his hands. When he opens them, a large fireball appears between his palms. He throws it at the two monsters, but unfortunately, the attack was too weak. The bull monster attacks him, and Tora realizes how fast it is. Luckily, he managed to kill at least one of them, which was the fox. However, he soon realizes things aren't going as well as he thought, because the fox he believed was dead is actually biting his leg. Sensing the danger, he kicks it away and starts to run. But in the next second, the bull monster appears right in front of him, ready to crush him. It uses its horns to toss him aside, slamming him into a tree. Tora coughs up blood, overwhelmed by the intense pain. In that moment, he is surrounded by the three of them. The elf tells him he got what he deserved, asking how he dared to kill her Kel, and says he will soon be begging for death. But to the elf's surprise, the horse delivers a powerful kick right to her face. The horse then begins to relentlessly beat her. She starts screaming for help, calling out to her two monsters. Now, not just two, but three monsters charge at the horse. Furious, she asks how a mere beast dares to humiliate her, swearing she will kill it. But before she can make a move toward the horse, her head is also blown apart by Tora. After she dies, the three monsters vanish. Exhausted, Tora collapses to the ground, wondering if he is about to die. But just then, the large horse approaches him. It begins to sniff him, and Tora tells it that it's okay and thanks it for the help. By nightfall, the blonde man finally wakes up. Startled, he wonders what is happening, but as soon as he looks forward, he sees Tora. Tora notes that he has finally regained consciousness. Confused, the man asks who he is. Tora explains that he saw him being attacked by dark elves and saved him. At that moment, the man's horse walks over to him, and he calls the horse Tilly. Tora comments that the horse is very intelligent, even understanding the need to protect its owner and move to a safer spot. The blonde man thanks him for the help, introducing himself as Asis of the Beck family. Tora then introduces himself as well. He asks if there was a specific reason for the conflict with the dark elves. Asis says there was no reason at all. They were simply on a pilgrimage with their servants when they were suddenly attacked without provocation. He had heard that other races were violent, but he never imagined it would be to this extent. Overwhelmed, he begins to cry in desperation. After calming down a bit, he apologizes to Tora, explaining that the people he lost were very precious to him. Tora asks if they were his family, and the boy explains they were the knights and servants on the pilgrimage who had been with him since he was a child and practically raised him. Hearing this, Tora realizes that Asis is truly a good person. He asks how many dark elves attacked them, mentioning that he killed two. Asis says he believes that was all of them. Not wanting to take any chances, Tora activates his explore magic and begins to scan the entire region. He tries to identify any other hidden dark elves, but fortunately, he realizes there are none left. Asis bows to Tora and asks if he has any urgent business. Tora says no, as he is also on a pilgrimage. Asis is surprised that someone so strong is traveling alone and asks if he is the son of a great family. Tora simply says it's hard to explain. He adds that he isn't actually that strong, explaining that he killed one elf by surprise and struggled against the other, only winning with the help of the red horse. At that moment, Tora activates his power, and Asis does the same. In doing so, the two finally recognize each other's strength. Tora is surprised to realize that this guy is actually quite strong. He thinks that, if he hadn't absorbed the Dark Elves' mana, he would be even weaker. On the other hand, Asis realizes Tora isn't quite at the level to face two necromancers, but suspects he has great combat instincts or a special lineage. He is confused as to why Tora is wandering alone, but regardless, he tells him that if he doesn't have a set destination, he would like to invite him to House Beck. He promises to repay the debt for saving his life and for escorting him home safely. Tora asks what he means by payment, and Asis explains that the Beck family are vassals of the Great House Arabian in the north. They are a lineage of enchantment artisans who have created magic artifacts for generations, and they will make a magic artifact suited just for him. The next day arrives. Asis says it seems everything is finished. In his heart, he wanted to bring everyone back to his family's lands, but he knows that won't be possible. Even so, he turns to Tora and thanks him. A confused Tora asks what for, and Asis says it's for not laughing at him. He explains that a noble crying over the sacrifice of his subordinates is usually considered a pathetic sight, but Tora asks why it would be pathetic. Isis says that's simply what he was taught by his father since he was a child. And those who die in righteous battles will dwell in the celestial palace with the gods, so mourning them would be a weakness. A true noble must know how to move forward despite the sacrifices. But if strength means not grieving for your family's death, then he thinks he can never be strong. However, Turan tells him that this isn't a weakness, it's kindness. Then Aziz suggests to Turan that since they've decided to travel together, they should speak more casually from now on. After all, there doesn't seem to be much of an age difference between them. Our protagonist agrees, saying they can do whatever he likes. The boy, very excited, says he's counting on him from now on and calls him a friend. This surprises Turan, being called a friend, but he still shakes Aziz's hand and says he's counting on him too. Later, they stop during their journey, and Aziz suggests they take a break there. Then he pulls out a large box. Curious, our protagonist asks what it is. Aziz explains that it's a cooler box. He has been keeping plenty of food in it since the last city. Our boy asks if the inside is always that cold. The kid says it is, and thanks to that, any food lasts about a week without any issues. If it gets too cold, you just heat it up, and he adds that this is a magic item that dispenses water when you press a button. This other one creates a shelter if you gather some wood, and this one sounds an alarm if anyone gets close. He also mentions that the clothes he's wearing are a magic item with a self-cleaning function. This leaves our boy quite surprised, as he knows magic items shouldn't be this common. It really is impressive. And he says that just those clothes would be enough payment for saving his life. But Aziz comments that things like that aren't worth nearly as much as his life. He promises to reward him with something much better once they get home, but if the elders don't allow it, he'll make one for him himself. Besides, nothing beats what he did, and he can't even remember how many types of magic he saw him use during the trip. From animal manipulation, freezing and levitation to liquid control, strengthening, light emission, restriction, instant death, terrain manipulation, and even lightning strikes. He asks if he spent his whole life just practicing magic, or if he has some kind of bloodline ability that lets him learn any magic instantly. But our protagonist thinks to himself that it just happens. He reminds Aziz that they agreed he wouldn't look into his family background. The boy, a bit embarrassed, says it was just a joke and that such a bloodline ability couldn't possibly exist because it would be too absurd. But anyway, how old is he? His face looks like someone who hasn't even reached 30. And to Aziz's surprise, Turan says it's about half a month until his 19th birthday, while Aziz tells him he's turning 43 this year. This leaves our protagonist in shock, but the kid comments that a 24-year difference isn't that big of a deal for them. But he really should have realized it when he said he defeated those two necromancers. With that much magic power, who would have thought there were two such geniuses in the world? Curious, Turan asks what he means by two. Aziz confirms it. She might not be at his level, or maybe she's similar, given her bloodline. Either way, he knows another genius his age, and she's his second cousin. Our boy asks if he could ask that person to make a magic item for him, but Aziz says no. She isn't from a side branch, she's from the main family. Our boy asks if she's from the main family, and Aziz confirms it. She's the princess of Arabian, and she might even become the head of the great bloodline in the future. Unlike an ordinary family of mages, it's not easy for the leader of a great bloodline to pass that position to their own biological child. Because in a great bloodline, there are dozens of relatives from the same generation. Among them, someone stronger than the patriarch's child always ends up appearing. Even so, among the patriarch's children, Mesa was born, and she has the greatest magic talent of all. In just 10 years after her magic power awakened, Mesa mastered the Arabian bloodline magic and all types of combat magic. As a result, having received all kinds of support, even at only 20 years old, her magic power isn't much different from the senior members of the family. Our boy asks, with that much magic power at her age, did her family give her some special support for the future? Aziz says that's exactly it. She even inherited her great-uncle's magic power when he passed away. Well, of course they received a portion too. Hearing this, Turan realizes there's definitely a reason why the great bloodlines are at the top. Finally, Aziz tells him that it looks like they've arrived. Seeing this, our boy is quite surprised, and Aziz tells him that this is the Decane Plain, the central territory of Arabian. After walking a bit more, they finally reach the Burke family territory, called Zabalim, which is a massive mansion. At the mansion gates, Aziz's mother finally reaches her son and asks what happened. The boy simply hugs his mother, full of fear, and starts telling her everything. Meanwhile, our boy in the background wonders if he really is 43 years old. At that moment, his father finally appears as well and tells him to have some dignity. At the very least, he should call her Madam Nervous. He just apologizes. Then he goes and introduces our boy Turan to his parents as a new friend he made in the south. He's the benefactor who risked his life to save him when he was on the brink of death. If it weren't for this friend, he wouldn't have made it home. His worried mother says his pilgrimage path shouldn't have been that dangerous. She asks exactly what happened, and he tells her they were attacked by necromancers, the Dark Elves. His mother, furious, screams, "The Dark Elves, those filthy creatures dared to touch my son." She says she won't rest until she personally leads an army to tear them apart. But beside her, her husband tells her to calm down for now, as people are watching. Then he approaches Turan and asks if he could know which family his benefactor belongs to. Our protagonist says it's hard to say. Aziz's father asks what he means by hard to say. Our boy explains that, to be honest, it's more accurate to say he doesn't really know. He was born to a commoner mother and doesn't know who his father is. Aziz is truly surprised, saying he hadn't told him that before. But our protagonist says it's not exactly a story worth sharing. Aziz's mother says she understands. So your name is Turan, and you don't know which family you belong to. But since you saved the child who is the treasure of our house, as the matriarch of the Burke family, I will give you the reward you deserve. However, it would be difficult to offer him a room in their mansion, so she'll make arrangements for him to stay in the best lodging in the city instead of the main house. Hearing this, Aziz asks his mother what she's saying and how she could refuse to host the benefactor who saved him in their own home. But his mother says that in normal times it would be fine, but right now, there's a distinguished guest in their house. Even though he's his benefactor, it's difficult to let in a guest whose identity is unknown. She asks Turan to understand. Just then, someone comes down the stairs, saying that if it's because of her, her aunt doesn't need to do that. She doesn't think someone who saved Aziz would suddenly try to assassinate her. At that moment, a girl who looks very fragile, wearing an all-black robe, appears before them. Aziz immediately recognizes her as Mesa, his second cousin, curious. He asks what she's doing there. In the back, our boy realizes that she's the woman who is the Princess of Arabian, but she looks more like a corpse than a princess. Mesa says it hasn't been long since she was almost assassinated by those worms from Zara, so she basically came here to hide. Aziz asks if she really suffered an assassination attempt at the main house. With such a strict defense system, how could that be possible? Mesa interrupts him, saying, that's exactly it. There's probably a traitor inside, and it's not like there are only 1 or 2 people in the family who dislike her. She tells everyone she's tired and will retire for the night, wishing them all a good night. And that's how Turan spent the night at Aziz's house. When he woke up the next day, he was in a completely luxurious room. After he got ready and dressed, he began walking through the hallways of the house. Aziz appeared from the other side, asking what he was doing, wandering the halls. Our curious boy asks what a certain object was, and Aziz explains it's a magic lamp they created themselves. But while they were talking, a loud thunderclap struck outside, leaving our boy quite surprised. He asks what that was, and Aziz comments that it seems Mesa is training her magic again. She really was dedicated. Turan asks if that's the Arabian bloodline magic, and Aziz confirms it, calling it the Storm bloodline. He says he never hated his blood, but that makes him a bit envious. It looks like a real god. Watching this, Turan thinks he's become curious about how strong the next generation's heir of Arabian really is. By his side, Aziz asks if he wants to see. Turan says he's curious, but he doesn't think it's a good idea since he's still a stranger in their house. But Aziz says, so what? It's not like you're an assassin. He excitedly adds that, to be honest, he trained with Mesa a few years ago, and it's been bothering him ever since. So he wants to see her get frustrated for once when she faces him because he wants Turan to train with her. So, the two of them head toward where Mesa is. When she turns around, she recognizes her cousin there and asks about the other person. Our protagonist introduces himself as Turan. She says yes, of course that's Turan. She then asks what they're doing there, and Asis says it's no big deal. They just saw her practicing magic and wanted to join in. He asks if she remembers training together a while ago. She says she does, recalling how he tried for a whole week while she got it in 2 tries, making him run away crying. At that moment, he turns to Turan, annoyed because he realizes he's laughing at him. But he brushes it off and says that his friend, Turan, is easily one of the most talented mages he's ever seen, a complete monster. Then he suggests that the two of them have a duel. Maisie asks what he means by a duel, and she turns her gaze toward Turan. She begins to release her power, and our boy looks up at the sky, realizing just how strong she is with those lightning bolts. She puts immense pressure on Turan, making him tremble with fear. He realizes just how terrifying she can be. Maisie stares at him and apologizes, saying it doesn't look like he's on her level yet. This makes our boy turn serious, but Asis interrupts, saying that while he might not match her in raw power, his ability to learn magic is incredibly fast. He calls Turan a magic genius unlike any he's ever seen, saying even Maisie might not be on his level. She comments that since he's praising him so much, she wants to see what he's capable of. Asis suggests a contest. They each show a spell the other doesn't know, and whoever replicates it faster wins. Isis thinks it's a good idea and asks for her opinion. She agrees, noting she heard Turan doesn't even know his own lineage magic. To keep it fair, she won't use her innate magic either. She says she'll go first. With a single step, vines begin to appear, circling around all of them. The vines then grab Asis and toss him into the air, making him panic. She explains that this is creation and plant manipulation magic, asking if he can do the same. High up, Asis begs her to let him down, but she tells him to stay there because it's fun. Watching Asis dangling up there, our boy simply reaches down and touches the ground. He thinks to himself that fire magic is just a manifestation of the phenomenon of combustion, and water magic is just extracting moisture from the air. Still, he simply says, grow. Realizing the vines work the same way. It's about making seeds in the soil grow rapidly. It's not creation, but growth. A vine then begins to grow from his own arm. This surprises even Maisie, and of course Asis as well. She notes that since he said grow, he must have figured out the nature of the spell immediately. She asks if he's seen it before, but he says it's his first time, and she says, a bit irritated, that what Asis said about him seems to be true, which is rare. So, now it's his turn to propose a challenge. She wants to see what he can do, so he thinks of a spell she won't know. He knows using Zaha lineage magic would be suicide. So, he finally remembers a different one, and at that moment he holds out his hand, and a little mouse emerges from the grass, and Maisie asks if it's just animal control, wondering if that's all he's got. But Turan tells her the mouse is just an ingredient. Turan simply stares at the mouse, and a spell begins to absorb its body, disintegrating it completely. This leaves Maisie in total shock. Our boy says that's the magic. She quickly says that now it's her turn, and at that moment, she uses the same animal control magic to catch another mouse. After grabbing it, she begins trying to make it decompose, but she simply realizes she can't do it. She's left wondering how he managed it, and she's sure this isn't any ordinary magic. Nearby, Aziz asks why she uses such disgusting magic, and Turan says it was just the first thing that came to mind. However, he starts to think that he already had his suspicions. Could it be that even the great Arabian family doesn't know about this? Aziz then says it doesn't seem to be working. He asks the table to grant Turan the victory, but Mesa is furious and tells him to shut up, offended that he thinks she can't do it. It's said that when using magic, the factor of causality is an extremely complex element. And if the phenomenon you want to cause is natural, the user must clearly recognize the cause of the magic, and the amount of mana used must be appropriate. Among these, the ability to perceive the cause of the phenomenon is a very important factor that influences both the success rate and mana consumption. One way to compensate for a lack of causality is to invest a large amount of mana, making up for the inefficiency with sheer volume. In Mesa's mind, she simply orders him to rot while he's still alive and begins to pour in massive amounts of mana. Finally, it actually works. Aziz is surprised by this, while our boy in the back knows exactly what she did. Completely exhausted, Mesa says she finally managed it. But right after that, she collapses to the floor in total exhaustion. Worried, Aziz asks what's happening and tells her to open her eyes. Meanwhile, our boy wonders what the reason could be, and if she really used too much mana. He knows people don't usually faint just from running out of mana. At most, she should just be tired, yet she lost even the strength to support her own body. But looking at her, he thinks he finally understands. He grabs Mesa and asks Aziz if there's a healer nearby. Aziz says there isn't, so he tells Amanda to bring water and salt to the girl's room. As he carries her, he notices she's so light, he feels like he's carrying a lamb. She was so weak she shouldn't have even been able to stand. Soon after, the scene shifts to Mesa's room. She finally wakes up, and Aziz's mother, her aunt, worriedly asks if she's okay and if she's conscious. Surprised, Mesa asks why she's there, and her aunt explains that Aziz said she suddenly fainted while training magic with the guest. She asks if it's true, but Mesa just stays quiet and nervous. The aunt asks if that man did something to her, saying they will keep an eye on him for now. But Mesa says no, it wasn't his fault and it was just a small mistake on her part. She then asks everyone to leave because her head is throbbing. Her aunt tells her she made some soup for her to eat. She knows Mesa doesn't eat because of her magic, but she needs to think about her health and should at least try to have a little. After her aunt leaves, Mesa just says thank you. At that moment, she looks at the soup, and as soon as she takes a spoonful to try and eat it, as soon as the soup enters her mouth, something happens to her body and mind. She begins to remember a woman and a child begging Mesa to save them, saying that if it's her, she can do it, while the child cries that it hurts his sister. Terrified by these memories, she drops the soup in a shock. She then begins to fall into a state of total despair. Meanwhile, in another location, in the basement of the Beck family, at the temple of the goddess Manka, our boy comments to a knight that the doors and walls are very solid, with only a single gap like muscles trained for hundreds of years. The knight tells him to give up on any attempt to escape. This man is Aramber. Our boy just says he understands and that he wasn't even thinking about that. The knight says his stance was very solid, and our boy agrees. The old man approaches and repeats that it was extremely solid. Then our boy begins to observe the knight's movement. Curious, he asks what he's doing, and the man says he's just training. Observing this, our boy realizes that every movement was the minimum preparation needed to apply the next force. He wonders if this is the efficiency of a truly trained body. The knight then approaches and asks what he saw in his sword movement just now, but our boy asks what he's talking about. Realizing the man is serious, he says he thought it was incredible. The knight says he understands. He comments that most nobles consider martial arts insignificant because it's easier to attack from afar with magic. It's because their physical bodies are weak, and since their minds can't dominate their bodies, they rely on cheap tricks. Our boy notes that unless it's a lineage specialized in physical combat, like the lineage of Hercules, focusing on magic power ends up being much more efficient. However, When going through trials, situations arise that you must face even if you want to avoid them. The knight then goes to Turan and tells him to hold the sword. Our boy asks if he didn't lock him up specifically because he thought he was suspicious. Yet now, out of nowhere, he's giving him a weapon. But the knight says it doesn't matter, as it's just a piece of iron. What makes it a sword is the body of the one holding it, and with his current weak body, he can't even cut him. Hearing this, our boy thinks about what he could do with that sword. He then asks the man to watch closely. At that moment, he begins to inject mana into the sword, creating a sort of magic sword. The knight quickly tells Turan that's not how it's done. He tells him not to involve mana in it. He instructs him to put more weight on his front leg and press down as if the earth were supporting his feet. He begins to explain various things to Turan, like how to hold a sword, while our boy listens to everything. He then tells him to repeat it 10 times and not to stop breathing. As he watches the repetitions, he comments that he is indeed a good vessel, and that if possible, he should find time to push his body to its limit. He says mana is nothing more than a trick. Mages think their physical abilities are guaranteed, but that's just the bare minimum. A properly trained body tears through the battlefield without needing the help of mana. He tells him he needs to understand this difference, and our boy says he'll keep that in mind. Just then, the door opens. When our boy looks, it's Aziz's mother. She says she was rude to Mr. Turan and did something one shouldn't do to their benefactor, so she asks for his forgiveness. Our boy says it seems the young lady is doing well now, and he's the one who should apologize, as his conduct as a guest was inappropriate, but she says Mesa wants to apologize to him personally and asks if he has a moment. The scene then cuts to the mansion hallways, where Mesa says this has been a bother. She mentions he was locked in the temple because of her and apologizes for causing unnecessary trouble. Our boy says it was necessary, and more importantly, he's glad she's okay. She looks at him and asks about yesterday's magic that made the animals rot. She asks if it's an unknown lineage magic, noting the mana consumption was absurd, and asks if he's been trying to deceive people. Our boy says no, that's not it, and if she understands the principle, she can use it too. She asks if he's refusing to teach her for free, but he says it doesn't matter to him whether he won or not. Annoyed, she asks what he means and how things are supposed to end if they just leave it like this. She suggests a deal. If he tells her the secret of that magic, she'll teach him a secret technique of the House of Arabian. Our boy says that sounds perfect. The two of them then begin to talk. After a while, she finally succeeds and says that, at its core, it's basically biological enhancement magic. He used invisible microorganisms, and he admits it. Mesa says it's just as she thought. She was using too much mana without realizing it, which made her inefficient. It's really frustrating, and in the end, she still lost. Even though she succeeded, it was only through brute force. Duran says he'll consider this part of the bet, but she argues that it doesn't count. Normally, when evaluating magic skill, you don't include dumping such an absurd amount of mana. She asks if he could consider it a draw for Aziz's sake, as she doesn't want to see him acting smug. Duran says that's fine, he can do that. Mesa then goes to her dresser and says it's time to pay the price. She picks up a comb and says this should work. She starts combing her hair and explains that when objects rub together like this, it creates a phenomenon where they attract each other. But our boy interrupts her immediately and says it's just static electricity. This leaves her completely surprised, and she asks how he could possibly know that. She says that knowledge itself is one of the world's deep secrets, but she decides she'll find something better to pay him back since she needs to find something he doesn't know. She suggests they continue training together until she thinks of a proper compensation. She claims it's just to pay her debt, not because she needs him. On the other hand, Duran is very excited and says that's great. He says they can meet every afternoon in the garden. Later, at dinner, the head of the family says it's not much, but he should eat his fill. What does he mean it's not much? There's actually a ton of food. Aziz asks why it's so extravagant, noting there's more food than on his own birthday. It looks like the head of the Arabian family is visiting, while his mother stays quiet. The protagonist thinks that this is definitely not an ordinary meal. At that moment, Aziz's mother brings up their previous conversation. She heard her son promised him a powerful magic artifact as payment for saving his life. Our boy confirms it, and his mother asks if there's something specific he wants. Our boy says he wants something to help with defense. He explains that while magic is good for hurting others, it's difficult to protect yourself. So, if possible, he wants something to help against surprise attacks. Aziz's mother says they deal with those often, so it won't be difficult. However, they don't have anything ready at the moment. Aziz asks if he can make it, but his mother tells him to give up unless he wants to level House Burke to the ground. Then, the young man sitting across from them says he'll do it himself. By coincidence, he recently finished an order for the main house, so he has plenty of free time. His mother asks how he plans to do it, and the boy says that for surprise attacks, it's best to have something you always carry. Something like a ring, earring, or necklace that immediately activates the guardian lineage's defense when mana is injected. His mother says it's not a bad idea and asks for the deadline, which he says will be 1 month. She says there's nothing more embarrassing than parents bragging about their children, but Mello's skills are already on par with hers as the head of the family. The patriarch explains that this means a master-level enchanter will dedicate an entire month exclusively to this one artifact. Our boy is grateful but asks if it's a bit too much. Aziz's mother says it is a lot, but it also means her son's life is worth quite a bit. Since they can do it, it's fine. She says he can stay with their family for the entire month and tells him to make himself at home. The next day, our boy starts walking through the city with his friend Aziz. Aziz says he thinks his mother has taken an interest in him. He admits he told her more about him before going to bed. He told her everything from the fact that his magic talent is on par with Mesa's, to how he never neglects his training. His original intention was to stop his mother from looking down on him for being a wandering noble without support. However, our boy says that hearing all this now, it sounds like she wants to recruit him into the family. Aziz says that's exactly it. They shower you with benefits, put on the pressure, and then try to hook you with a beautiful young lady. He mentions that many adults in the family join that way. Our boy comments that it sounds complicated, but Aziz tells him not to worry. The artifact is just to gain his favor, and she won't force him to marry just because he accepted it. His mother isn't that classless. He then asks if he has anything to do now. Our boy says he agreed to train with Lady Mesa in the afternoon. Hearing that it's in the afternoon, Aziz says they still have plenty of time. He suggests they go on a patrol together. He says that while Zabalin isn't the capital, there's still plenty to enjoy. He tells him he can't be thinking of spending the whole day just training magic in his room. Our boy admits that was actually his plan. Aziz tells his friend that life is too short not to enjoy it and starts dragging Duran through the city. They even end up going into a casino. And then a bar, but our boy keeps turning everything down. But while they were walking through the city, our boy sees a wanted poster. He stares at the picture. He wonders if this could be Kjorn. But it can't be. There's no way it's Kjorn. Later, the two of them head to a theater. Inside, Aziz tells him the story. Around the year 219.5, when the warriors of Arabian set out for the Demon Desert, there was a knight named Kjorn. With divine help, Kjorn defeated the enemy after a difficult struggle. The two of them get very excited watching the fight, which was basically a reenactment. Aziz asks if it was worth watching, and our boy says yes, it was very good. Meanwhile, he thinks about how Kjorn told him back then that he was just an ordinary knight. But based on what he's seeing now, it seems he has incredible skill. He thinks that if he ever meets Kjorn again, he'll ask if this story is actually true. But now on the next day, when our boy finally wakes up, he sees a knight staring right back at him. The knight asks if he rested well. The protagonist says yes, but asks what brings him there. He says that yesterday he saw that his vessel looks very promising, so he's going to train with him. He asks if he's willing, and our protagonist says yes, he can do that. He thinks to himself that this will be much more rewarding than just having fun all day. At that moment, Aziz finally shows up at Duran's room saying he came to tell him there's an incredible play today, but then he sees his uncle right in front of Duran. His uncle says they were just about to train and that he should also forge his weak body. He asks if he wants to come, but Aziz quickly says no, claiming he just got back and is very tired. Immediately after, he starts running back to his room. Our boy is left surprised, wondering why he's acting like that. But little did he know that hours later he would be completely wiped out. He finally realized why Aziz ran, because this guy is a complete training monster. Finally, after the last exercise is finished, the bearded man says that's enough for today, while Thor boy is completely dead tired. The knight asks if he's tired now, and Duran quickly says yes. But the knight says that even so, since he's a mage, he should consider himself lucky that he only has to do this once. Our boy asks if it would be different if he weren't a mage. The knight says yes, of course it would be different. An ordinary body, even after being forged, weakens over time. It must be constantly tested to maintain it. But for mages, thanks to mana, they can keep a body in an ideal state. So once he turns it into steel, it won't weaken anymore. But he thinks that's enough talking for now, as he's rested enough. Our boy is confused and asks what he means by enough. He wants to know if it's still not over. The training-obsessed knight quickly says, of course not. Today's training was for the body, not the mind, and he's already rested plenty. Now, he's going to teach him weapon techniques and hand-to-hand combat. It ended up being a whole day of suffering for Duran. It was said that the routine in the Burke family was extremely intense. Combat training with Aziz's uncle, who told him this is a special area where the body feels several times heavier than normal. If he slips up for a second, he'll be crushed to the ground. This was basically what he did early in the morning, training his body. In the afternoon, he would return to the mansion and repeat magic training with Mesa. Before he knew it, 3 weeks had already passed. While he was training with Mesa, he realizes he missed the target again. Mesa says that for someone like him to be having difficulty with this, it must be really tough. Our boy says that of course he's not from Arabian. She says in that case it's hard to help. She never thought she'd have to aim lightning magic like this. She asks if it's not enough to just fire and hit. Our boy says it's harder than it looks. Just then, a messenger appears. He walks toward Lady Mesa. He asks her who this man is, but she tells him it's none of his business. More importantly, what happened? She had ordered no one from the main house to approach while she was recovering. The man explains that the head of the family has summoned her. She asks what happened and tells him to answer quickly, warning him he'll regret it if it's not important. He simply tells her that the Dark Elves have launched a major offensive in the south. 3 cities have already fallen, so they're organizing an expedition. At that moment, Torin thinks about the Dark Elves. Those damn butchers, it seems they've appeared again. Mesa says she understands and tells him to let the others know she'll return soon. Then she turns to Torin and says that unfortunately she has to leave. Speaking of which, she still needs to settle the score for that disgusting decomposition magic. So she asks him if he knew that electricity also flows through the human body. Confused, he asks what she means by electricity. She notes that he clearly doesn't know, and there's no way he could, since it's a secret of the Arabian house. She says she'll consider the debt paid if she teaches him this properly, as it will surely be a great help. Our boy agrees. She explains that when a person sees or feels something, that part of the body sends a tiny amount of electricity to the brain. If it's through the eyes, it goes from the eyes to the brain. If it's a smell, it goes from the nose to the brain. At that moment, our boy starts thinking about the tiny electricity passing through the body. He realizes this electricity flows everywhere. If he can speed up the electrical signals transmitted along that path, then as he opens his eyes again, an electric shock flashes through them. Everything seems to freeze as he hears Mesa's voice in slow motion, asking him how it feels. Our boy is thrilled, but asks what on earth is happening. But soon after, his body starts to tremble with intense pain. Once he returns to normal, Mesa says it looks like he succeeded, though he used his mana recklessly. She warns him that the headaches will make it hard to adapt, but once he gets used to it, he'll be able to maintain it for a long time. Torin thinks this technique is far too valuable compared to what he gave her, but she just takes a leap and says it's just an investment. Since he has talent, if he learns even more incredible magic in the future, she'll collect everything back, along with what he already owes her. After saying that, she flies off into the sky, while our boy just watches her go. Meanwhile, in the city of Morgan, at the center of the Decca Plains, the entire population was very excited about the arrival of the Arabian family. Aziz watches and remarks that even though they're just heading out to hunt dark elves, it looks like a victory parade. He's amazed by their enthusiasm. At that moment, he sees his cousin and starts calling out to her, but his father grabs his arm and tells him to pull himself together and show some noble composure. Suddenly, to everyone's surprise, a messenger shouts that the head of the family is entering. Sitting among the knights, the boy begins to observe that person. He realizes that this is the current head of House Arabian. He's a grim-looking old man, but Torin knows he's incredibly powerful. His name is Battle Arabian. Our protagonist approaches Aziz and mentions that the family head doesn't look well. He's very pale, suggesting his health might be failing. Aziz says he heard rumors that the head was badly injured fighting the leader of House Zaha long ago, but since it was so long ago, it might just be old age. Suddenly, to everyone's surprise, the family head raises his hand. Massive black clouds gather above everyone and lightning begins to strike all around the area. The commoners cheer excitedly, shouting, "Long live House Arabian, the Lord of Thunder protects his descendants." Watching from the sidelines, our protagonist realizes this is the true power of Arabio. Even in his weakened state, he easily blankets the entire land. This is the pinnacle of human magic. He thinks to himself that one day he'll be able to do the same. Meanwhile, in another location, Aziz's brother hands him a magic artifact. He explains that just wearing it increases his physical resistance, and if he channels mana into it, that power grows even further, reaching a level similar to the nobles of the Guardian lineage. However, the mana consumption is quite high, so it's best not to use it for too long. Our protagonist remarks that it's an incredible treasure. He notes that such an item would be rare even in the most powerful families, as it's exceptionally well crafted. Just then, Aziz's mother approaches him near Turo. She asks if he'd be interested in formally joining their family. He thanks her for the offer, but explains that it would be difficult for him. Aziz's mother says she understands. She mentions hearing from Aziz that he has a lot to accomplish and would struggle to stay in one place. She tells him to just think of her offer as an old woman's wishful thinking. He goes to her and says he will never forget the hospitality she showed him, and that Aziz and the Burke family will always be his friends. She agrees that's enough for her. After our protagonist leaves, he notices two men waiting for him. Aziz's uncle simply hands him a weapon. He explains it's a magic device. It doesn't have many special features, but it's durable and the blade is incredibly sharp. Our protagonist happily thanks him. He calls him Master, which clearly catches the uncle by surprise. However, he's clearly pleased by the gesture. After he sets off, Aziz catches up and covers our protagonist with a cloak. Our protagonist and his friends ask if he was jealous of his old clothes.